As we age, we may become more forgetful. We misplace things. We forget why we walked into a room. We recognize people's faces, but we can't always recall their names. For some of us, this can mark the early onset of dementia. Dementia progresses gradually and can eventually cause us to struggle with daily activities, leaving us confused, frustrated, and increasingly dependent on others. We may leave home less and less as we discover that going out alone is not what it once was. The familiar becomes a maze, and we end up lost and bewildered. Imagine if our clothes could journey with us through the onset of dementia. Imagine if the clothes we wear offered mental stimulation, nudging us to spark neuroplasticity and slow down cognitive decline. Imagine if we could turn to our clothes to guide us home when we get lost, helping us hold on to our independence and our dignity. Welcome, dear audience, to the future of care. Where the clothes we wear protect us and alleviate symptoms and even empower us to live life with greater strength. Imagine this, our clothes hug us each day. What if they truly could hug us tight when they sense we need it most? Imagine if our clothing could enhance our mental health and well-being years before the onset of dementia even begins to appear. Anxiety disorders can begin as early as childhood and are one of the most important mental health conditions and the largest and most significant in the world. What if your clothing could sense your heart rate rising and could sense other signals of anxiety creeping in? What if your clothing could squeeze you tight, providing a gentle pressure that supports progressive muscle relaxation, calming your parasympathetic nervous system and reducing your fight or flight instincts? We can all do it. You time your breathing to the rhythm of the hugs, helping to slow down your breaths, lower your heart rate, and ease you through the panic. And take a breath. Aromatherapy beads embedded in your clothing release a calming scent to enhance the therapeutic effects. And what if stress and anxiety became something that we took more seriously? Not only does stress and anxiety affect our mental health and our psychological health, they can also affect our physical health. This can result in conditions like vasoconstriction, where our blood vessels narrow. It can trigger hot flashes and cause sweating as the body reacts to try to cool itself down. Similarly, women nearing the menopause can experience uncontrollably intense heat waves that rise through their bodies thanks to changing midlife hormone levels. And in fact, let's think about the average visitor to Singapore. We have an amazing climate, don't we? But I'm sure, gentle audience, some of you there find it sometimes uncomfortable. What if your clothing could sense your body temperature rising and elegantly and automatically adjust your style to increase ventilation? What if that was part of the beautiful feature of your clothing, releasing trapped heat from within the layers? These features and so many more are waiting for us in the future. So, gentle audience, are you ready for the outfit of the season? Please join me in bringing the future into today and in bringing care into our wardrobes, our homes, and our neighborhoods. My speakers this afternoon are here to inspire and provoke you into seeing exciting possibilities for designing care into the world around us, from the clothes we wear to the spaces we occupy. But before we begin, I want to express my care for you. Thank you for sitting beautifully all day long. But did you know that sitting down and being sedentary is really not that great for our health? Sitting down all day actually is linked to weight gain. I think we could imagine that. It's linked to diabetes. It can be linked to poor heart health, even cancers, dementia, and even earlier risk of death. So I care about you all. I would like to invite you all to join me for the rest of this segment in improving your own health and making everyone feel good. So that at the end of each talk today, I would like you to get up on your feet and give a rousing standing ovation to every speaker. Can? Let's try. Welcome to the future of care. On your feet, everyone, and clap. Whoa! We are looking well. I can see the energy returning. Okay. You may return to your seats. Thank you. We wanted to bring the future to you, and I would like to thank the team, and I'll introduce the team a little later in terms of who made this outfit. But first, it gives me absolutely immense pleasure to invite our first speaker onto the stage. Muchaneta Napel is the founder of Shape Innovate. Thank you, Muchaneta. Please, a big round of applause. She's here all the way from the UK. She's the founder of Shape Innovate, an organisation dedicated to bridging the gap between policy making and the fashion industry. She has an incredible array of experience behind her and has been talking and teaching and working in this space for the past decade. She's delighted that the future is catching up with her, and I'm delighted to hand over the clicker to you, Muchaneta. And remember, a lovely standing ovation at the end, please. Muchaneta, over to you.
Thank you. I feel a bit like I won't know now whether you loved my talk or whether you just want to be healthy. So thanks, Tamsin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sticking around. We really appreciate it. I want to start with a dramatic statement. We are at the dawn of a new era. Clothing has become the line of defense in healthcare, monitoring, diagnosing, and even healing. So I want to first quickly introduce myself. I know Tamsin did a wonderful job, but I thought, let me just quickly tell you who I am. I am Muchaneta Napel. I float between the UK and the Netherlands. I speak about innovation, fashion, and policy. So I'm a bridge. So imagine me bridging fashion and technology, bridging fashion and innovation. I also lecture at the London College of Fashion, where I try to implement innovation in education, which I think is super important. I feel when it comes to innovation, we're really focused on CEOs and companies, and we forget to educate those who are going to be the future of fashion. So today I'm going to talk about medical wearables. So let's dive in. The reality we face today is that while medical wearables and medical science is advancing, people are living longer, we are still burdened with chronic conditions. So the question should not be, can we live longer? The question should really be, can we live better? So I basically believe that wearables, especially when you think about smart garments, may actually hold the key. You know, it's a way of us managing our health through our clothes. What is key is doing it at the right time. How many of you know about startups and innovations that began, then disappeared into the darkness of the night, never to be heard of again? I think a lot of that comes down with timing. So when it comes to creating these amazing wearable garments, timing is everything. So let me define wearable devices for you, just in case you don't know, which I'm sure you do. They are garments embedded with sensors that monitor vital signs like heart rate, respiratory rate as well, and body temperature. This is the kind of technology that's considered game-changing for people with chronic conditions, the elderly, and those recovering from surgery. I also believe it's a technology that would help us prevent becoming ill. You know, there's a lot of focus on when you're ill, but how about before you get ill, preventing that illness taking place? 10 years ago, I as a consumer could never have imagined having real-time data on my findings. But it's no secret that health challenges today, like our lifestyle-led conditions, diabetes, obesity, and even the environment is impacting how we lead our life. The good news is that wearable technology can help us monitor and manage our health better and even our conditions. So now I'm going to play this video for you because I want you to imagine how your clothes that you wear daily could track your health rate and heart rate and also your glucose level.
Greek textiles company Pepper Valley has developed a range of wearable medical devices, tops that act as a monitor for early diagnosis of cardiovascular diseases.
We moved to also other fields of textiles, like the smart and e-textiles, because you offer a service in addition to a very nice clothes that you wear. For example, smart textiles can serve people by supervising them during their daily routine to have some feedback regarding their cardiovascular health, by getting their electrocardiogram of a good quality electrocardiogram, where, for example, a doctor can get more data from the wearer, and then the doctor can predict that the wearer should make more tests and checkups in regard to his heart health, and maybe predict an incident that would be fatal for the wearer. So adding services to the clothes is something that we believe it will be the next thing in textiles and fashion.
I added that video in just in case you think I'm telling fairy tales up here. I thought if I can show you a brand that's actually creating smart garments that look after our health, you might just believe me. I think the key takeaway, like I mentioned earlier, is about preventative health. Health wearables have the capacity to offer real-time data, make adjustments, and also look after our well-being. So in this sense, wearable technology goes beyond aesthetics. You know, it's about becoming a tool of living healthier. So I want to do like a quick case study with you. I want to share Sarah's story. She's a 38-year-old woman with a type 1 diabetes. But quick disclaimer, Sarah does not exist, but I thought let me create a visual for you so you can understand where I'm going with this. For years, Sarah used fingerprint tests to monitor her diabetes, but it wasn't enough to prevent like her spikes and her drops. So in 2020, Sarah started using continuous glucose monitor as a wearable device that tracks her glucose in real time. What it did, it helped Sarah continuously measure the glucose and send real-time alerts to her smartphone, allowing her to take immediate action if it was required. This small change drastically changed her ability to manage her condition, reducing hospital visits and also giving her a bit of peace of mind. So now imagine if the next step was putting this device into our garment. I know, it sounds impossible, but the good news is that this is an idea that's actually pushing forward with a lot of researchers and startups. How can we ensure that the clothes we wear not only protect us from being naked, but also look after our health as well? So when it comes to that collaboration, that marriage of fashion and medical innovation, I truly believe they've got the potential to become the power couple. You know, it's all about empowering us as individuals so we can take control of our health and well-being. So what's next? You all probably are going to agree with me that technology moves at a really fast rate right now. So it means that we live in a world where it is possible to create smart clothing that give us a full picture of our overall health. And this, I personally think, is valuable currency. So basically, Sarah's story kind of shows you the real potential of wearable technology and how it can improve the quality of life. Also, by providing these kind of like insights, ensures that she is able to monitor her health and actually do better. The technology not only reduces the strain on the healthcare system, and if you're from the UK, you know the NHS is like crippled and struggling. You know, it also empowers the individual, like Sarah, to take control of her life. So I want to share with you some exciting news and how wearables are going to play a huge role in preventative health. How many of you in the audience are wearing an Apple Watch? Guilty. Okay. And devices like the Apple Watch or the Fitbit are used to monitor your health and your sleepness. So I want to ask you a question. How many of you know or understand the data that your Apple Watch gives you? Does anyone, a couple of people do? Okay, that's kind of interesting. I'll tell you why in a minute. These wearables are not just gadgets. They're tools for encouraging a healthier behaviors, provide valuable data for early interventions. The only problem I have found personally with these type of wearable devices is that they're not accessible to all. So I started a campaign called Donate Your Wearables, which allows those who come from economical backgrounds that mean that they can't afford such devices are able to actually get devices from people who no longer need them and use them in order to monitor their own health. So you got wearables like the Oura Ring, which is helping people maintain a healthier lifestyle. They offer real-time feedback, and also they can adjust their habits and respond to stress, poor sleep and activity, and prevent larger health issues as well. So I personally think our next step when we're looking at the marriage of fashion and our healthcare wearables is going beyond the wrist. This is where clothes can come into play. This is where fashion also plays a role. Imagine a garment that can monitor your mental health or monitor your baby's vital signs. We already create clothes to protect firemen or even firewomen. We're also protecting those who go to space, athletes, soldiers. So why haven't we created clothes that protect us as individuals? So now let's imagine a future of personalized healthcare. Medical wearables that have the potential to change us from passive patients to proactive participants in our own health. So who would buy a jacket that could monitor air quality and alert you when pollution levels are high? Would anyone invest in such a jacket? I would, okay, a few people. Okay, I think this really depends where you live globally. When it comes to that merge of fashion and wearable devices that look after your healthcare, it really depends what part of the world you live in. For example, I live in London. And in London, if you've ever been on the tube, it's super loud. I don't know if my watch always alerts me, like, it's too loud, don't be in it for more than 20 minutes. So can you imagine wearing a garment that tells me or has little gentle vibrations to let me know that it's way too loud for me, I've been in it too long, it's time for me to leave the tube station, maybe walk to my next stop. This is what I'm referring to when we talk about preventative health. It's looking after my ears while they're still working, rather than look after them when they stopped working. So it's really important, especially since I grew up watching the Jetsons, that I'm excited about moving towards this AI-driven smart textiles world that I feel like we all need right now. So I wanted to put this picture up because when I said the word, a jacket that can stop you from getting diabetes or look after your health, I wasn't sure what you were all imagining, so I was making sure you weren't imagining that. It won't look like that, you know. The most likely it's going to look like what we're wearing today, because the key to adoption is invisible technology. Nobody wants to see that you're wearing technology. You just want to wear a jacket, right? So it's so important that when people are putting together these garments, a lot of them are focusing on how can we make this technology invisible so we don't look like that. And I'm also quite confident that fashion is really going to play a key role, because I don't know if you remember some of the reactions to the Apple Watch from the fashion industry. Let me read one out for you. It said, "It's not a real watch, it's a gadget. I feel like it's designed for people who love technology but don't understand or care about style." That was from Jean-Claude Bivier, who's the former CEO of TAG. Then the Apple Watch tries too much. As a result, it loses the elegance and the timelessness that a true watch should have. Oscar de la Renta also said, "Fashion is about emotion. I don't see the emotion in the Apple Watch. It's designed for utility, not beauty." So this tells you how important fashion plays when it comes to creating products that are not only accessible, but are attractive. Nobody wants to walk around looking like RoboCop. So it's so important that when we are creating these functional wearable devices, wearable garments that look after our health, that they are attractive. Also, I'm happy to add as well that when it comes to that arranged marriage of fashion and healthcare wearables, that it's really important that we also develop this kind of way of monitoring our mental health, which I'm sure most of you have heard in the press, how important it is for us to take care of our mental health. We all lead very busy, stressful lives. So imagine clothes that will be able to, like what Tamsin said, hug you when you need it. Or they can monitor your medication to maintain your well-being. I've got 2 young kids, so I will definitely need that, I know for sure. Moving on to barriers. Like anything, there's going to be barriers to adoption. I can stand up here and tell you what we need, but it's not that simple, it's not that easy. So it's very important to actually take into account what the barriers are. Data privacy. How many of you think wearables will take your data and run away with it? Yeah, I'm a tech head, but I still think that too. Yep. You know, and most of us, I'm sure, when we're getting those apps or we're getting our phones, we never read that long list of what, you know, terms and conditions, letting us know what it is that we're signing up for. We just press accept. So that's a massive problem as well. So that's one of the barriers. Also the cost. It's quite costly to create such a garment. How are you going to wash it? Can you wash it? You know, what does it mean? There's all these types of problems that come into play. But I'm a massive believer that if you are creating a wearable garment, you need to talk to the washing machine makers and see how you can make it work. And this is where collaboration comes in. Also, there's that challenge of trust. Consumers need to trust that your product is not going to be taking their information and misusing it in some way. And I think this is where regulation will step in. It's so important that we regulate a lot of these smart wearables to ensure that not taking advantage of the consumer. So all in all, they predict in 5 to 10 years, fashion and medical wearables would basically come into mainstream. So the future is basically loading right now. And, you know, a lot of the health will no longer be confined to hospitals anymore. It will be worn on our bodies, be woven into the fabrics of our daily lives. Feel free to quote me on that one. And whether you're a designer or you're looking to kind of integrate health into features into some of the clothes that you wear or incorporate health into some sort of like care plans, I think it's important to understand that this is just the beginning. Look at the potential of wearables, then rather look at where they are currently. So the secret sauce is that you need to act now. Let's design a future where we live longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. And just in case I was not clear, the future of health isn't just in hospitals and clinics. It's in the clothes we wear and the spaces that we inhabit. So if today's talk has sparked your curiosity, I have put together some QR codes of articles that you can read to learn more. And I'm also happy to share this later if you don't catch them. So I ask again, with a show of hands, are medical wearable garments the emperor's new clothes, or are they truly game changers? Hands up, we think it's the emperor's new clothes. I see a couple of hands, I will not point you out. And who thinks they're game changers? Yay, fantastic. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Professor Jeanne, who's here from Hong Kong. She is the Professor of Fashion and Textiles at Hong Kong Polytechnic University. She has a fascinating role there, really exploring the intersection of design, fashion, and technology. So Jeanne, over to you. Thank you so much. And remember what to give her at the end. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here to share with you my work on intelligent textiles for rehabilitation, where we use AI and integrated sensors. So what have we invented? We actually have invented an intelligent knitted textile system that actually changes color according to different hand gestures and also touch reactive sensors. So let me show you a quick demonstration. And if you can look at the demonstrator's hands and remember that all the gestures and all the interactions are actually programmed by my team. So we can actually customize it. So this is the video. And this is a 6-meter wide textile that is knitted with merino wool and photonic fibers. And this is the first interaction. So you can play with this fabric and you can chase a stripe, or you can simply change the color of your interiors just by changing your hand gestures. So for example, you may be sitting at home watching Netflix and you want to change the color of your interiors with a thumbs up. You can simply do that. So in the context of rehabilitation, how are we using it? We are actually using it for sensory stimulation. And sensory stimulation is an intervention often used by occupational therapists for people with cognitive challenges. And extensive research has shown that it has a very positive effect on elderly care. So what are the main challenges in this domain? Well, within this domain, you'll find that there aren't many sensory tools available. And when they are available, they are usually provided by industry suppliers. They may not be designed with the stakeholders to create something that's suitable for them. So you'll find that most of them are cumbersome, passive, obtrusive, or they require a very specific space for you to implement. So you may ask me, why use textiles? Why have wearables? Well, because it is visually and tactily familiar. For example, our textiles, it feels exactly like the knitwear that you're wearing. The finishing is like a designer knitwear that you can find at Orchard Road, and it is machine washable. So we have done tests to show that it is machine washable according to the industry standards, gentle cycle, cool water wash. So our design processes has been developed to empower everyone. Because we believe that AI is for everyone, why should there be a big tech divide between ages? And we often will have co-design engagement with our stakeholders. Most importantly, we need to talk to the therapists, we need to talk to the facility managers, and of course the end users, because we need to find out what kind of interactions they prefer, what will be intuitive for them. There's no use creating something that they need to read a giant instruction booklet for. So we want to create something that is easy to use and fun to use. And most importantly, we also want to create designs that resonate with them. So for example, we are creating textiles, so we can very easily implement surface designs onto the fabrics so that they will have some sort of ownership with the materials. So it is very important for us to balance the therapist's sensory stimulation requirements and the design expectations of the users. So these are 3 panels that we have implemented with the Hong Kong Seng Kong Wee Welfare Council, and they have installed it in one of their district health centers. And you can see that we have designed it with different landmarks of the neighborhood, and we have programmed the gestures to fit in with the therapist's requirements. For example, one is for training hand dexterity, and the others are to encourage them to do simple stretching exercises. And another collaboration that we had was with Curators Hong Kong. They came to us telling us, hey, we have users who have more advanced stages of dementia. So they may be wheelchair bound, they have mobility issues. I need you to create something that we can bring to them, something that can be deployed anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a hospital, in a medical facility, something that we can even bring to them when we are doing our outreach programs. So we designed this touch reactive cushion for them, and they were touching them so that they can give them immediate feedback. And we also are able to knit different textures so that they also gain comfort when they are stroking and fidgeting the cushion. So our studies conducted by the occupational therapists indicates that as compared to typical sensory cushions that are available in the market, our interactive cushions actually can have a higher engagement rate. So the key takeaways, we think that intelligent textiles can bring about individualized interventions within multi-user context. And because it is a familiar material, you don't just have to have rehabilitation at a medical center. You can bring it home, you can do it with your loved ones. It doesn't have to be in a very specific space. And most important, for our designs to resonate with the users, because design is very important, even as you age. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well done, everyone. It feels great, doesn't it? And it feels great when you're on stage. I'm delighted to invite our third and final speaker for the first part of this Future of Care session. Perhaps I can invite to the stage Claudia Poe. Claudia, please join me. Now, Claudia and her team are actually the ones behind this artifact. I went to her some months ago and said, Claudia, I've got an idea. Could you help to create a dress from the future? And she's one of the rare people that said, okay, let's give it a go. Her team has done wonderfully. So can we please have a round of applause for Claudia for that and her team, ladies, wherever you disappeared to. Claudia is the founder of a Singapore-based fashion company, an inclusive apparel company, and she'll share more about that in a minute, a company called Werable. So over to you, Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamsin. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. And I think I want to start the session first off by saying that you don't have to care about fashion to join us and participate in this conversation, but you most definitely care about your own bodies. So let's take a moment to think. Based on our family history, what is a disability we are most likely to acquire in the next 30 years? I'm just going to let you ruminate and cook on that. Do we have a family history of diabetes? Will we develop cataracts? How will your life change? So my family and I have been navigating some healthcare challenges, and we're learning that diabetes, amongst other things, can affect your mobility. It can affect how you feel about yourself. I personally don't have to look too far into the future to be like, wow, these are some major realities that we have to face today. So fashion and healthcare might seem worlds apart, but even after all that, really, we're just trying to buy more time with our loved ones. All right, that's pretty much it. That's what it is for me. And it can be highly emotional, which is how I'm feeling right now, emotional, but also nervous. Yeah. But it's how we participate in the world. It's how we interact with each other. So don't you want to live long? And don't you also want to live it well? How can we add life to our years and not just years to our lives? And I can't talk about the future without talking about this massive word on the screen, belief. What do we believe? Well, I grew up with my parents believing that they always told me, Claudia, you're very good at drawing. They lied lah. I'm really bad at drawing. I poached this from my mom's Facebook account and she doesn't even know I've done that. But going back to this topic on belief, they believed in me so much, they said to me every day, you're good at drawing, until I willed it into existence. Some people call it delusional, but it made me feel confident enough to practice every day. So why am I talking about belief? Because I think to design a future of care, we need to have that degree of gumption, courage even, and sometimes that's hard to generate on your own. So that's why I'm here. Hopefully I can inject a little bit more belief and hope into this future of care. My name is Claudia, and I'm the founder of Werable. And honestly, since day one, since that little photo of me, I just wanted to make something that would be useful for the people around me. So when I was in college, I befriended Christina. She was 27 at that time, and she was diagnosed with ALS, which rendered her arms paralyzed. She invited me to her home to understand how she would get dressed, and hopefully we could build a better wardrobe and a better future at that.
The whole process really started with Claudia and Amy coming over to help me adjust one of my garments by adding straps to them so I could use it to lift my clothes on and off using doorknobs. And from there, it really kind of blossomed into a collection of clothing that has different hacks within the clothing to help me get my clothes on and off. So the more energy I use trying to get dressed, the less energy I have to accomplish other things.
So I just want to take a moment and imagine if you could step into your clothes and they just automatically inflate onto your body. How many of you have watched Iron Man? yeah, something like that. But at the end of the day, I've got Christina in front of me, and I can't tell her, hey, wait for 20 years before I can give you something that actually works. So we started building inflatable structures into her skirts and her pants. I'm a fashion designer. I know nothing about soft robotics. So what did I do? I bought an air pump from Amazon. I had a friend, my housemate, 3D print a nozzle, and I slapped a magnet on it. We built a lot of prototypes. And what we looked for was speed of inflation and also the ability to withstand the weight of any fabric that we fastened onto it. It needed to also have enough room. So when you step into it, there's actually enough of a circumference for Christina's hips. In fashion, this might seem really bizarre, but earlier today we heard a lot from emerging tech. In other fields, we're looking at AI, self-driving cars are old by now, but what if clothes can do so much for our bodies that we never imagined? So today, Werable exists to fashion a kinder, more inclusive tomorrow. So really, clothes are just a means to an end. It's what I know how to do now, but who knows where I'll be tomorrow, hopefully. And I just want to build better experiences for our bodies. We design garments alongside stroke survivors. So if you notice in this GIF, she's not moving her left arm. And these designs were extended beyond stroke survivors, and perhaps it could even be helpful for people who experience reduced dexterity in their fingers. So earlier I touched on the fact that we want to produce things that help people today, but surely we can build a roadmap towards technology, even if it might not exist yet. So this is what the dress looks like when it's laid out. And maybe one day if Claudia is smart enough, or she has smart enough friends, we can build inflatable structures into this to coil onto the body too. So ease of dress can take on multiple forms, as I've shown you. We've seen magnetic closures, they aren't new, but I remain curious as to how they could be incorporated into different stages of care. Of course, I want to improve our physical well-being, but I also do believe that clothes should preserve our sense of self. What we wear can also change the way we walk, especially for persons who use crutches. From a medical standpoint, we have to be mindful that the things that we design don't shift someone's weight, don't perhaps cause even more harm. So we develop solutions that also help us go about our day-to-day lives, like something as simple as carrying your laptop. So ultimately, all I'm trying to say is design can create solutions that improve our well-being and also allow us to do things that we never really imagined. It plays a massive role in rehabilitation, and I really do hope that it can prevent the development of other kinds of disabilities as well. What we wear can change how we feel about ourselves and even make us believe in ourselves a little bit more, just like my parents believed in me. I believe we can all design around seemingly impossible moments. I hope you guys do too. Thank you.
We're going to invite Muchaneta, Jeanne, and Claudia to take a seat, please, ladies. I love the fact that you inspired but also brought the very practical elements in, yeah? Because there are realities, and we've spoken about some of these before. But before we go to the practicals, I wonder if there's something that you really hope to see come next that we're not quite getting there for yet. Like, you mentioned Muchaneta, and I love the fact you talked about it. When the Apple Watch came out, who's going to use it? In fact, I'm so old that I remember the days when I was super excited to have a Sony Walkman.
I'm right there with you, yes.
Yeah. Anyone else remember a Sony Walkman?
Yes.
What? Yes, a few of us young people in the room. And whoa, the coolest thing, and you could get 15 songs in your pocket. Whoa, so cool. And everyone of my age knows you needed to carry a biro with you for when it's snaggled up. And so then the technology evolved, and we had the iPod, and we had an ecosystem around it, and none of us really use any kind of physical music anymore. It's Spotify. So what are some of those things, those kind of moves that you think need to happen to bring these beautiful visions to life? And that you're all coming from very different lenses, which of course isn't by accident. But Muchaneta, in terms of some of the things you've seen, that exciting, tantalizing possibility that's just there, what we might need to bring together to realize it.
I mean, for me personally, when I'm talking about what's happening in terms of innovation, I like to use like real world examples like you just did with the Sony Walkman. So I think people then understand a bit better what it is that you're referring to. So if I'm talking to somebody and I say to them, listen, they're going to create a garment that will look after you. You know, it will moisturize your skin. It will, it will do all these wonderful things. And people look at me like I'm crazy, like you've been watching way too much of Back to the Future, that's not going to happen. So what I then say to them is, are we still carrying our mobile phones in a suitcase? No, we're not. So it kind of shows you that, you know, people didn't believe that we would all own a mobile phone, a little mini computer in our pocket. So if I say that, then people kind of, something drops, like the penny drops, like, oh, you're so right. Yeah, I mean, the mobile phones didn't exist once upon a time, and now they do. And if that doesn't sell them, I talk about the sewing machine. There was a time we didn't have a sewing machine. And when I use these type of examples, people can understand a bit better and believe it a bit more.
Yeah.
I'm currently in the job of convincing, but I'm hoping to graduate and be in the job of action and impact. But, you know, but it does start with educating people first so they understand what's coming and how it will affect them and what they need to do themselves.
And I wonder also if it's an element of tangibility. It's partly why we wanted to create an artifact, because for many people, sorry, this is going to get even more depressing. As we get older, our creativity drops, which means our imaginations fail a bit, right? So I often do an activity with my adult students and show that their creativity levels are a fraction of primary school children. So actually, is it our responsibility even to actually build some of the prototypes to help people visualize it? And maybe, Jeanne, is that what you're doing with your product as well?
Yes, I think it is really our responsibility. I'm wondering whether there are any engineers in the audience. Any engineers?
Yes, to the engineers.
So I think for me, there's still a major step that we need to cross over for our textiles. I mentioned that my textiles are machine washable, but the components are not, the batteries are not. So I'm hoping to cross over that step. And talking about students, a lot of people will often challenge new technology. They'll be like, oh, but it's still like this and it's still like that. Well, I have a firm belief, what I cannot solve, my students will solve. And that's why it is really important for us to transfer the knowledge and having a platform like this where we share our information because we are feeding into that ecosystem.
Yeah, I love this. And it actually, we talk about the engineering, and engineers, wonderful. But Muchaneta, you also tapped on this. We need to understand that human beings aren't always motivated by function. And I think we've had conversations before. My adorable parents-in-law, my mother-in-law, you know, rest in peace, my father-in-law, both had to wear earpieces because they were becoming very hard of hearing. They would rather sit in silence in a conversation and pretend to lip read, pretend to understand what's going on, than wear the hearing aid, because it made them feel old, it made them feel ugly. And it's really why I wanted to provoke that lens a little bit about fashion that cares. It needs to be appealing.
It needs to be appealing and accessible. And I think in our conversations we had, Tamsin, I spoke to Tamsin about a startup company that designed hearing aids that looked like earrings. So you would never know that person was hard of hearing because what they had on their ears was earrings. And like I mentioned in my presentation, invisible technology is key to people adopting innovation.
Yeah.
You know, I have been convincing and fighting and struggling with the fashion industry to make them understand the role that innovation can play in pushing us forward. Because to them, they just see bulk. They see it's not invisible, it's there, it's ugly, it's not attractive. So, you know, it's just something where you're like, I always say to them, look at the potential of where it can go.
Yeah.
Don't look at what you're looking at right now because it's still in its early stages, still in its infancies, but the potential is what you need to look at. And that's what I find hard to get them to see, the potential of a product and where it would take us. But I do also believe, looking at Apple products, since we're using them as an example, iPad had no use. When Apple created the iPad, there was no demand for an iPad, but they created a demand. So sometimes when I'm looking at some products, when I feel like there should be a demand, I try and look at the iPad and be like, how can I create a demand for something that nobody in this audience feels like they need right now?
Fascinating. And I'm also interested because we've talked on the tech, but Claudia, what I love is, so the future of fashion, there's so many opportunities through the technology. Claudia, a lot of your fashion isn't tech, and we brought some in today, but a lot of it is not digital. But it really is sexy. Your clothing is gorgeous. So how have you learned some of those techniques, and how have you brought them in?
I think before getting into that, I want to double click into what you've just said. I often found that if I'm struggling to convince someone to adopt a solution that I've made, maybe I'm solving the wrong problem. Maybe I'm not asking the right questions, and perhaps I need to be educated on that more. When I found myself in these sort of moments where I'm like dying to convince someone, hey, I'ma wear my shirt, like, doesn't work out too well. And then grandma says to me, are you waiting for me to have a second stroke? I mean, you all laugh, but I went home and I cried, but you know, like, these are some things that I've had to grapple with, and I was like, I've totally neglected how she felt, and I didn't mean for her to feel that way. So when we say fashion's highly emotional, that's when I really, really understood that I went about solving how things looked, but then neglected how she felt in it, really felt in it. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. I'm going to thank you, audience. You've been lively on here. I'm not ignoring you. An interesting question that segues quite nicely from that is, should fashion and care start with fashion or utility? But Claudia, you're kind of suggesting neither. I would love to know what you all think about that. What's the starting point? Because we're kind of hearing different angles, right? So you feel it's really starting with the human in the middle.
I think fashion and utility sit at the end. They're both solutions. But
enablers, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. But I think before we even get to that, what is the problem that's being experienced, and why is it so painful, right? To the point where you wouldn't have to beg this person to use a solution. It must be big enough for them to go, my life is in so much pain, I am willing to try anything today. So there's no negotiation needed. And then once you've gone over that hump, that's where utility comes into play. But I think they come in tandem. Creativity never really was either or for us. And also in my team, there's this belief that it might look pretty shit today, but at least it works. Tomorrow we worry about how it looks.
So the aesthetic can come later, but we know it's critical. How about Jeanne? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there should be a nice balance, but often the sad reality is that we have to market it to different people. So the strategies that my team has done is that usually when we want to pitch it to, let's say, for example, a more textiles and fashion crowd, we will push out, our big guns. We will knit with cashmere and we'll say that it's Lux Tech, and they will suddenly perk up and, oh, it's Lux, and they will be more inclined to use it. And by using strategies like that, we have successfully been able to sell our products to some high-end assisted living developments, and they are looking for that. They don't want generic materials. They do not want something that you can find commonly in the market. They want that luxe. So that's how we do it.
So you create that appetite for it, as it were.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think when it comes to communicating anything, language plays a really key role, and taking a human-centric approach to it as well. If you're trying to sell me something, I want to feel like you're selling me something I need, I want. You understand my needs and my wants, so therefore I can connect with the product that you're trying to sell for me. So I completely agree with you. If you're talking to fashion PR people, they don't care if it's functional. They just want to make sure it's beautiful and it's made lovely and it's exclusive. But you talk to a tech person, you talk about the function, they get excited and buzzy, and they don't care that it's made out of cashmere. They want to talk about the technology behind it and understand the function. So I feel that these are lessons that we can learn from other industries. If you look at the sports industry, they don't care if the outfit is particularly beautiful or not. They want to make sure the runner can run fast.
But
that's what's first and foremost, How it looks afterwards, okay, we can make, we can collaborate with Balenciaga or whatever, but it needs to be able to, do the job. But when you're talking to fashion, look at the shoes I'm wearing. They're a good example of I'm taking my comfort, the care of my body is going to the back, and I'm wearing these uncomfortable shoes.
They are worth it.
And they're worth it, right? So if you're talking to fashion and you're going to talk to me about functionality of this shoe, you're going to lose me. But if you talk to me about how beautiful it's made, the knitted mesh material, you have me at hello. And so when you're talking fashion, they speak a different language.
Yeah.
So it's imperative for those who come from a technical side, whether you work in healthcare, whether you're an engineer, or whatever it is that you do, a problem solver, that you learn the language of fashion so you're able to entice them and help them understand. Or otherwise, you might as well be speaking Dutch to them because they're just going to look at you and be like, I don't understand what you're saying. So language is key, and you taking a human-centric approach.
I think it's the key thing, being clear about what you're designing for. Because for you, Claudia, and for Jeanne, you're looking at people who have a need and you can help them. But Muchaneta, on the other end of this extreme, our clothing can be preventative in terms of healthcare terms. And the sad truth, any healthcare professional in the room knows that we're not motivated to care for ourselves, unless something goes wrong and then say, hey, Claudia, Jeannie, can you help me? So it's almost that on the preventative lens, we need to find a way to trick people into caring for themselves while they're walking around in their lovely, gorgeous clothing. And then when the condition gets worse, we can really step up. Is that maybe the angle that we lead with
I believe that. I mean, I made my kid eat vegetables, but she thought she was eating yogurt. You know, it's about kind of presenting what's good for you in a way that they can accept. Because changing human behavior is super difficult. We're all wired a certain way. I mean, I sat up here trying to convince you guys that marriage of fashion and healthcare wearables won't end in divorce, that it will work out, that they're going to be a power couple. But the problem is that, you know, if you're used to just wearing clothes just for clothes' sake, for making sure that you're not walking around naked, you know, then I'm trying to convince you that it will look after you. It's like trying to convince my mum to buy the iPhone 16 and release her Nokia. It takes work, and I think you have to be persistent. You also have to be understanding. The other side might not get it yet, but that's okay. Let me change my way of communicating to ensure they get it. Let me make it be something that makes sense for them.
I think I can share an experience that I had with Stroke Support Station. We worked with 11 stroke survivors. Initially, nobody wanted to work with us because they might be going through a very difficult patch in their lives, and who wants to open up all their life challenges to a total stranger? But then when we positioned it as, no, we're not trying to come in and help you per se, but maybe together we can help someone else. So this mental model of paying it forward seemed to work well in terms of collaboration, something that we've spoken about as well.
Ladies, it pains me to say this, and my clothes can't help me through this, that we're nearly out of time for our wonderful panel. Can I ask you, because I'm horrible really, to wrap up with one piece of actionable advice you can give to the audience? What can they do to bring care through their clothing to life?
I can go first.
I love this panel. I don't have to work harder to learn.
Something I learned this year, and it's impacted me a lot. Learn to ask for help.
Be open to new ideas.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
There's new technology and new approaches every day.
Absolutely, endless potential.
And for me, I think what I'll share is it's your responsibility to seek out the knowledge. Do not wait for someone to teach you. Go out there, be curious, and seek out what it is that you need.
Wonderful. You know the routine by now, everyone. Can you please join me in thanking our wonderful speakers, Muchaneta, Jeanne, and Claudia. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, ladies, this is not the end of the future of care. It's only the beginning. We're going from the micro environment, what could be closer to us and the clothes we wear, to a slightly further afield environment, that literally the space around us. So we've got 3 other speakers coming on stage now who are going to talk to us about different lenses on how we can create environments that care. It gives me absolutely great pleasure to invite my next speaker on stage. She's here from America, Dr. Esther Sternberg. She's an internationally recognized mind-body science, place and well-being pioneer. She's the author of the award-winning book, Well at Work, Creating Well-Being in Any Workspace, and also Healing Spaces. Her story is fascinating, that she is a physician, she specialized in rheumatoid conditions, and she noticed that stress is closely linked to inflammation and managing conditions. So her journey into this field has been really quite incredible. She's currently the research director at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, and she's the inaugural Andrew Weil Chair for Research in Integrative Medicine, with joint appointments in architecture, planning, and landscape architecture. She's advised the World Health Organization, the US National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine. And in fact, I think rather than me talking, it's far better to introduce her onto the stage and allow you to be interested and inspired yourselves. Esther, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And more than that, thank you for this amazing day. Now you can all stand up and congratulate. No, you can do that later. This has been so inspiring. Well, I'm going to talk about place and well-being. Nobody wants to think about COVID anymore, but the silver lining of COVID was that it became clear that the built environment, the indoor environment, plays an important role in health and well-being. The flip side, and we still are experiencing these negative effects of COVID, certainly in the United States and around the world, is how do you continue to keep people happy and healthy? And how do you get people back into those mostly empty downtown office towers? I haven't seen that actually in Singapore. Singapore is amazing, and I think we can discuss in the conversation why those office towers are full here. But in the rest of the world, office towers are still only 40% occupied. So at the beginning of COVID, we all saw those very scary images on the internet of the virus being spread and spewed out through the ventilation system. And that's true, that's really important. So it's important to have fresh air turnover, frequent fresh air turnover, excellent filtration, masking and distancing, but that's only the beginning. And the reason that's only the beginning is it reduces the dose and duration of exposure to the virus. But there's something else that's really, really important that ventilation doesn't do, and that is reducing stress. How many of you believe that stress can make you sick? Okay, when I first asked this question to an audience at the National Institutes of Health, where I was a senior scientist and section chief for 26 years before going to the University of Arizona, in 1996, only about a third of the audience put up their hands and then quickly hid their hands behind their backs because they didn't want their colleagues to know that they believed in such a flaky notion. But we have decades of proof now that chronic stress can make you sick in many ways. Increased frequency and severity of viral infection, decreased take rate of vaccine. How important is that during COVID and post-COVID? And the reason is because those stress hormones that you are releasing impair your body's ability, your immune system's ability to do its job and protect you. Susceptibility to viral infection, in fact, any infection depends upon the dose of the bug to which you're exposed, the duration of exposure, and importantly, your own resilience. Resilience is how quickly you bounce back from any stressor. You can't get rid of stress. Forget it. Don't even try. In fact, you need your stress response for life. It is life-giving. So what can you do about it since you can't get rid of all those stressors? You can eat a healthy diet. You can exercise every day. You can have healthy sleep. You can be out in nature. We've heard so much about that, and I'm going to talk more about that in this talk. You can engage in spiritual activities, whether it's religious or meditation or contemplation. And you can engage with friends and family and loved ones. And if you're doing all of those things, you will be engaging in the 7 domains of integrative health, as defined by the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. But it's really hard to do that, right? January 1st, you're saying, I'm going to go to the gym every day. February 1st, not so much, right? We need to, therefore, have a way to facilitate us engaging in these activities without us even trying. Now, in the United States, we spend over 90% of our days indoors. Therefore, we need to design those indoor spaces, design and operate them, to enhance resilience, to reduce stress. So I go into a lot of detail about how exactly to do that in my book, Well at Work, Creating Well-Being in Any Workspace. And also in this article in Building an Environment that I wrote with my architecture colleagues. Lead author is Dr. Althoff, engineer, who's an architect despite his name. And I'm only going to focus, given that I have 15 minutes, on one aspect of this, which actually dovetails into the previous discussion about the environment. To tell you that there is a lot of science behind why being in green spaces keeps you well, makes you well, both physically and emotionally. This is an accessible walking path that we worked with architects, landscape architects at the University of Maryland, a foundation actually which is in part associated with Singapore, the TIHA, and with the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And we created this path through a walking path through the what is effectively a medical military base. And there's a benefit to being in nature. First of all, you have a slow walking exercise. You get exercise without even realizing it. It can be a slow walking meditation. You can socialize with friends and loved ones. But being in a green environment in itself is beneficial. So I just came from Tokyo, where I was speaking at the Tama Art University, and I'm sure here in Singapore you know about forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku. When I first heard about that, I thought it's taking a bath in the forest, but it's not. It's going into the forest and walking slowly. We heard about this earlier, inhaling deeply, being in the moment. Again, it's like a walking meditation. But there's something else about being in a green forest, and that's this. What's that? Green light. Turns out green light reduces pain. We have a professor at the University of Arizona, Moab Ibrahim, who made these little green contact lenses for his rats. And he also put the rats in these green LED cages. And that significantly reduced their pain sensitivity. So he then took patients with fibromyalgia, a pain syndrome where your muscles and your joints hurt all the time, and he had them look at green light for 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, and that significantly reduced every aspect of their pain. They were able to sleep better, they had better quality of life, their moods were better. What else happens when you're in the forest? You're breathing deeply, and you're inhaling these wonderful scents, especially before the rain or after the rain. And this happens in the desert too, during the monsoons. There's this sweet, sweet smell in the desert. Well, it turns out that smell comes from what we call volatile organic compounds that come from plants that are released because of the moisture into the air. There are hundreds of these biogenic volatile organic compounds, and it turns out that many of them reduce anxiety, reduce stress, reduce pain, and reduce inflammation. Another thing that happens when you're in the forest, and we heard about this from the previous speakers. Can you hear that? Whenever I play this, audiences smile, they light up. There's something about sounds of nature that is beneficial, it's calming. And in fact, you can download these sounds off the internet if you have trouble sleeping. It improves your sleep, it reduces stress. Well, in my studies with the US General Services Administration, which I'll tell you about in a minute, we found that in fact, too quiet office spaces are stressful, and when it's too noisy, they're also stressful. We know that loud noises actually harm the ear and are stressful, but this was a surprise that when it's too quiet, it's also stressful. There's a sweet spot where the stress response is least and what we call the well-being response is highest, and that happens to be 45 decibels, which is the exact level of birdsong. I don't know if that's why birdsong is calming, but it's at that sweet spot. How do you bring the outdoors in? Well, certainly in Singapore, you certainly seem to know how to do that amazingly well. This is an example from a famous mid-century modern architect, Dion Neutra, son of Richard Neutra, who was considered the Frank Lloyd Wright of the West. And this is the Huntington Library in Los Angeles, where he put in plants and a water feature so you hear the sounds of nature. I took these pictures off the internet, and I actually visited one of these spaces yesterday, which is quite amazing, the Capita Spring and also Capita Green. And you have the airport, what an amazing space. You have these islands within the urban environment that provide respite for people to get into these green spaces. So if you can't go out into nature, you can bring it in virtually. And I'll tell you this story quickly about Morelle Phillips, who was in the video game industry, and she had a severe accident, severe neurotrauma, was in and out of hospital, and shared with me that she read my previous book, Healing Spaces, The Science of Place and Well-Being, as she was recovering, and she had an aha moment that she got out of the video game industry and decided to create immersive reality spaces in hospitals. So she set up her studio elsewhere in New York City in 2019, and then 2020 happened. And New York City was ground zero for burnout, suicidality, depression, anxiety in healthcare workers. So she quickly ramped up and created these immersive nature spaces in now over 70 hospitals across the United States, and we have one at our Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. What she found and has been finding is that 15 minutes a day in this virtual nature immersive experience significantly reduced stress, significantly reduced burnout, significantly reduced anxiety in healthcare workers. And we're also finding that we see a reduction in the hormone cortisol, the stress hormone cortisol. So you can dose people with nature and help them improve mentally and physically as well. So just quickly in the end to talk about this emptying out of office buildings, which again in the United States, we're still seeing only 40% occupancy or 40% utilization rates. How do you get people to come back to the office? Well, my thesis is don't mandate people to go back. Create well-being workspaces to attract people back to work. I live in Tucson, Arizona, about a 10-minute drive from 5 world-class spas. Nobody is mandating people to go to those spas. People go there because they are designed on purpose to attract them and to make them feel good physically and emotionally. So my vision for the future is to create well-being spaces wherever and for all, wherever you work. This is the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine new building complex. We can talk more about how we've done that in the discussion period. Wherever you live, again, we can talk about that in the discussion. Wherever you learn, this is our classroom at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, has lots of light, has sound mitigation features and other features. Wherever you heal, these same principles can be applied. Of course, you can see that Singapore is already ahead of the world in putting these green spaces into hospitals. And full disclaimer, on my right, on your left, that's a hospital in Chile, a burn center for children across South America, Karthikeyan, run by Dr. Jorge Rojas. And this is a Disney-like experience that was designed by my daughter and son-in-law and their team of students from Art Center College of Design together with Karthikeyan. So how do we get there? Research. Research is really important. Everything I've been talking to you about is based on my 20 years or over 20 years of research with the US General Services Administration that builds and operates all non-military federal buildings across the United States and around the world. And we used wearable devices, health devices, to measure the impacts of the built environment on the stress response, relaxation response, movement, sleep quality, and other aspects of physical and emotional health. This has given the GSA a roadmap, a prescription for a healthy building, for healthy office spaces, which are now being embedded into post-COVID reentry for the US federal government. You can have these labels on buildings that label them as well. There's private sector, there's public sector, there's foundations. It's a big business now. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. We can talk about that in the discussion as well. If you want more information about how to do this in your own workspace, you're welcome to take a look at that QR code and check out my book, Well at Work. And you can also go to the US General Services Administration website, sftool.gov, that gives these pointers based on our research, and check out my article there. And with that, I think I'll end. Thank you so much.
I will be inviting our second speaker onto the stage now. J.R. Karthikeyan. Karthik is the CEO of AWWA, one of the social service agencies in Singapore, where he drives the overarching strategy and operations, which spans 27 services across 15 different locations, supported by over 1,000 staff. And we've had the privilege of visiting a number of his facilities. They're quite incredible. So Karthik, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Actually, my job is easy today because enough has been said about the space, healing spaces, the designs, AI, sustainability, and a lot of those things has been already said. So all I'm going to do is show you all a lot of photos of how we have been doing it in Singapore. And Jeanne talked about an occupational therapist and how she works with occupational therapists. And if you haven't seen an occupational therapist, here I am. So I'm an OT, I'm an occupational therapist. There are 5 things that I'm going to talk about before I move my slides. Number 1, what is AWWA? Because if you have been in Singapore, you would probably be confusing aware and AWWA, mixing it up. We are not aware, we are AWWA. And what we do, we work with persons with disabilities, we work with families, and we work with seniors who are aging with diseases or with disabilities. That's what we do. The second thing I want to talk about is what is designed to do with a non-profit organization. Oftentimes in Singapore, the non-profit organization is called as SSA, Social Service Agency. And there is this misconception that we are cheapo, we take hand-me-downs, we use used furnitures, and our facilities are run down, and that's the way we are supposed to operate. I think that's changing. That's changing, and our funders, our government, and our donors are becoming a lot more enlightened, and they are funding us enough to have good designs which helps in healing. Number 3, there is this word participation in this. So what does participation means to us? You know, we talk about inclusion, we talk about integration, but inclusion is often overly used, probably. Overly used. And when we talk about inclusion, we don't define inclusion clearly. So what is inclusion for us is we remove barriers to participation. If someone comes to us with a disability, when someone comes to us with a stroke, we remove the physical barriers so they can participate in the environment. They can take public transport. They can go to a coffee shop. They can go and visit a family member. So these are the barriers to participation. So when you remove those barriers to participation, then we are including them. And that's how simply we define inclusion. Because when you use a lot of words, it is a little bit fluffy. So we don't use that. And how do we do that is through holistic care. I think Dr. Sternberg talked about the 7 different domains. And what we do in AWWA is bio, psycho, social, spiritual. So in everything that we do, we look at this BPSS. Our designs, our programs are designed based on BPSS. Our space is designed based on BPSS. And the way we interact with our patients is designed on bio, psycho, social, spiritual aspects. So that's why I loved your talk, Claudia, because I think we have a lot more to collaborate. Some of the things that we do, the third one is, I'm a trained occupational therapist and I'm trained in sensory integration. So how many of you feel overwhelmed when you are in a cocktail party, you're talking to somebody, but you're trying your best to actually concentrate because there's just so much going on around you? I have auditory discrimination problem. I find it very difficult to concentrate in a coffee shop talking to somebody, but I pretend as if I'm actually listening. But I'm trying my best. I'm regulating myself. And this is the thing that our patients go through every day. When somebody has dementia, they go through this auditory discrimination, they go through visual discrimination, they go through a lot of overwhelming sensory overload. And they have to overcome that. And the programs that we design helps them overcome some of those things. And I'm trained in yoga because I got very bored after COVID, during COVID. So I went on to take yoga instructor course, and I realized all they do in yoga is make the person relax. It's not all about those movements. It's not all about those acrobatic stuff. It's all about those relaxation. So when you have tension, headache, the paracetamol that you take is actually not going to help. You have to sleep because you have to relax. So the relaxation is what is going to help. So the space that we design incorporates all these elements. Sensory, make our patients relax, and make our patients participate. So this is an integrated space. We call it Kampong AWWA for our seniors in Ang Mo Kio. You are free to visit. And there is an early intervention center at Fernvale Woods, which is in Sengkang. So this is all about Kampong AWWA. We have a social cafe, and we have activity room for our seniors. If you look at the colors, if you look at the whole environment, it is pastel, it is pleasing, well ventilated, so there is enough oxygen. People sleep when there is too much carbon dioxide. So we make sure that there is enough aeration. All those things are incorporated in these design elements. This is our early intervention space for children, especially kids with autism. There is 1 in 100 diagnosed with autism in Singapore, and we have more and more kids in our environment, in our community. And the way we design the space for kids with autism is very, very important. And this is our early intervention space, and we incorporated play in every single element in our early intervention space. This is our home, Passaris. This is in Street 21. Again, you are welcome to visit. And we have, we don't have a forest here. We do, but we always use that on Sundays for walking. But we have incorporated a lot of green space within our buildings. So the building that we have built for adults with disability in Passaris incorporated a lot of green elements. It is not air conditioned, but it is cool inside because of the ventilation and because of the green elements. So this is the home. This is kindergarten. Kindergarten is the first inclusive preschool where we put together 70% of children who are typically developing and 30% of children who has developmental disabilities. We put them together and we incorporate a lot of sensory components in this preschool. And there is no therapy room in this preschool. There is no intervention room. Every classroom is designed as an intervention room. These are our other spaces, our school at Bedok. So there is a rooftop garden here. Again, we have incorporated green space, and this is our new dementia care space and our integrated home and daycare center. I will stop here and I will take more questions during the panel discussion. Thank you.
I would like to invite my last speaker for this session on stage, a good friend of mine. And those of you who are in the healthcare sector may have seen us on stage together some other times. Clinical Associate Professor Wong Hon Tim. He is a Clinical Director at the Centre for Healthcare Innovation and a Fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh with a master's degree in medicine ophthalmology. He is also a senior consultant at Tan Tock Seng Hospital's ophthalmology department. And I think it's best if I invite you on stage, Hon Tim. Please give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll leave you on stage.
All right, thank you. Time for some trash talking. The healthcare crisis is mirrored in the climate crisis. In fact, many would say that the climate crisis is actually a healthcare crisis. Those of us who are now suffering much warmer temperatures, both in the day and in the nights to come as well, will understand that. Hospitals are dealing with more and more patients with heat disorders, and it's all across the world, including Singapore as well. Air pollution alone, in the past 20 or 40 years, has actually led to about 135 million premature deaths across the world. And the next pandemic we will see will probably come from a virus that has jumped off an animal in search for a cooler climate, in search for a new home that we have bereft it of. When I signed up and graduated to become a doctor, I took the Hippocratic Oath, and as some of you will know, that is simply summarized into these 3 words: to do no harm. And it was meant for us to say that to our patients who would deliver care but do no harm. But the irony has hit us very, very hard now. As we deliver care to our patients, we do a lot of harm. Healthcare does a lot of harm to the environment. How much harm? We've realized that if healthcare were a country, if the entire healthcare sector were put together, we would be the 5th worst carbon-emitting country in the world, just after Russia. That's 4.6% as the estimate, but most estimates now go to about 8 or even 10% of global healthcare emissions. So we are very much responsible for the global warming and the work that's going to come and hit us and bite us in the ****. I myself am responsible. Anyway, I'm an eye surgeon and I operate in a hospital, a public hospital in Singapore. And these are the hot spots in a hospital. Anesthetic gases, those of us who have undergone a GA procedure before. There are good gases and bad gases. The bad gas is called desflurane, and 1 hour of general anesthesia is equivalent to driving a car 300 kilometers. That's from here to just the outer reaches of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Those of us who have asthma or care for people with asthma will be familiar with that picture on the right. That's an asthma inhalant, which is propelled by fluorocarbons. The use of 1 MDI, this is called a metered dose inhalant, in its lifetime is also equivalent to about 250 kilometers drive in a car. There is a good gas for GA. There's also a good inhalant for asthma as well. The good gas is equivalent to about 6 kilometers drive, and the same for the better version or more environmentally friendly version of an asthma inhalant, which is also 6 kilometers. And yet, healthcare across the world is only slowly waking up to this disparity and the lack of responsibility, if you will, of choosing the environmentally more conscious option when we deal with our patients. The others are quite obvious as well. Pharmaceuticals, especially with the supply chain and the packaging, also leads to a huge wastage. It is believed that about 60% of all our medications that we have at home, how many of us have got a stockpile in a cupboard somewhere? How many of us have discovered our parents' stockpile of drugs that they've kept all through the years? That's all wastage, and that all goes into the landfill as well. Like I said earlier, I'm responsible myself. I'm an eye surgeon, and I think for the past 25 years in my life, I've been doing cataract surgery every week of my life, literally. And it was only 2 months ago or 3 months ago that I decided to have a look at how much waste was generated by just one operation. And here we have it, and there you have it there. So cataract surgery just takes 15 minutes, usually, and it obviously just operates on about 15 square centimeters of prime land in the eye. But this is the waste that we generate. And it is actually often the number one operation in any hospital with an eye department. So for example, my hospital, Tan Tock Seng Hospital in Singapore, we do about 10,000 cataract surgeries a year. So imagine 3 kilograms by 10,000. This picture was taken in our ambulatory center, also in Ang Mo Kio. Karthik mentioned that district there. And we realized that with 2,400 surgeries done by that center every year, we would be contributing 7,200 kilograms of waste. None of this is recycled. None of this is reused. Everything is incinerated, and it lands up in our landfill, Pulau Semakau, which is already running out of space. So obviously, there are many things that we can do better. So thankfully, there is now a greater realization. The 3 logos you see here are the logos of our public healthcare sectors, and we're now being put under pressure, both from within the very doctors, nurses, and physiotherapists that work within our systems, and from the powers that be, our ministries and the government, to be responsible. The targets are below: a 10% reduction in water, 10% reduction in electricity, and a 30% reduction in waste. I'm glad to say that the 10 and 10, we're on target to reduce that in about 15 years or so, 10 years, sorry. But we are way off for the 30%. There's a long way more to go for waste reduction in healthcare, and I believe this is really across the world as well. The National University Healthcare System have started actually a very much academic-driven approach to healthcare sustainability. And in a couple of years, or perhaps even a few months, we'll be announcing a master's in healthcare sustainability and later on a PhD as well. In fact, the world's only and first professor of healthcare sustainability now works in Singapore, and we've had the privilege to be collaborating with him as well. Sing Health has built a fantastic culture of healthcare sustainability across their ranks. And at the National Healthcare Group where I work, we've also done a fair amount of good work. Two of our buildings are now Green Mark Platinum with SLE, sorry, and a lot of work continues. We also collaborated with the university students, and this is quite an embarrassing slide because we brought the students to our operating theaters and to our scope suites where we perform endoscopy. And the ideas they came up with were embarrassingly simple, but very, very effective. So very sneakily, we reduced the size of the tissue paper that the nurses would use to wipe their hands after every procedure. No one realized it, but we've managed to reduce that. We've also just introduced a small sort of box underneath the trash bag or the trash container so that it would compact the trash a little bit more so that more trash can get into one bag. We've simply drawn a red line on the sink so that the nurses will know exactly how much water would be needed to wash a scope. Prior to this, the nurses just had an estimation. In Singapore, it's called aga-aga. So they would just say, oh, it's about there. And often it was overcompensating, so lots of water was wasted. And maybe this is the most embarrassing. So we still have some paper records. This is going to be digitalized soon, but this instrument log was in portrait format. Maybe the designers would understand this. We were in portrait format and we could only fit in 2 patients' records. So we converted it to landscape, and we've actually halved the amount of paper that we use now. So very, very dead simple ideas like that. And where I work at the Center for Healthcare Innovation, we went out and asked all the stakeholders in healthcare, what would it take to equip doctors, nurses, and our allied health colleagues with the knowledge so that they could carry out sustainability projects in their departments, in their world. And we came up with a curriculum, which we've already launched, and that's CLIME. We're going to teach doctors and nurses how to redesign their care models with carbon in mind, with energy in mind, and not just productivity and finance. We're going to talk to our leaders. Healthcare leaders are really too busy with business as usual. Those of you who have visited hospitals know that we are struggling. We are still struggling very badly. So business as usual has always overtaken sustainability, but the leaders need to know the language of sustainability and how they can take their organizations through that journey. We're going to teach our healthcare people how to measure the carbon impact of their care processes. And last of all, we're going to teach them how to build more environmentally friendly environments, which is what our speakers have been talking about, and also use more sustainable materials in their choices. And what about my team? So we put my cataract team through that, and we've got quite a lot of effort that's gone in. And over this year, we're going to actually implement many of these 17 steps that we've actually thought of. And we will see a reduction in the waste from 7,200 that we saw just now, hopefully down by 40% to just 4,300. The number of the weightage of single-use plastics was also decreased by about 785 kilograms by the end of this year. And we hope that this will make an impact and at least drive this movement forward. And what about the waste that we couldn't reuse or we couldn't prevent? Here we go. So we started collaborating with designers like yourselves and also industry. And thanks to Tamsin, we were linked up with a company called Ipsy Ipsa Ipsum. And they managed to recycle all the low-density polyethylene plastic that was in this bag into this, an instrument tray. And another company called Similar Asia looked at all our gowns, and they also recycled them into this very, very rough bowl, but very, very aesthetic-looking bowl as well. So I think in my hand, I think I hold the future of healthcare. I have to give kudos to the 5 speakers that came before me in this session. It is well realized that the greenest thing that healthcare and society can do is to keep our population healthy so that they don't come into the hospitals, into a carbon-intensive environment and consume healthcare. That's the greenest thing that we all can do here. So whatever they do with our 5 speakers collectively will have a much greater impact than any hospital or any clinic on the environment. And I hope that continues. But this is the future then. So it not just symbolizes, I think, the realization of healthcare that we have to be responsible to the environment as well. But more importantly for me, I think it symbolizes collaboration between healthcare, between designers like yourself and the industry. So I hope this carries on. So that's it from me, and I'd like my compulsory standing ovation, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. May I help you with your waste? Thank you, audience.
Always clear your own trash.
We will now have a final short panel discussion to think a little bit about designing environments that care and creating environments that are more caring overall. And again, we will have the Slido questions. We've already got an amazing question here that I'm going to come to. So whilst we just settle down the last chairs, and we're not long till cocktails after the event now, so I hope you're feeling well, ready and excited to network. Perhaps I can invite Karthikeyan and Esther to join me back on stage. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I deliberately brought you together with very different angles, and I hope you all have agreed, wow, such fascinating people. And Tim, I was a bit mean to you because I made you come from a very different lens. Yes. We expect the clinician to talk about very clinical space design, but actually I wanted to provoke that thought that sometimes we're causing harm indirectly. So thank you for sharing that. I wondered if we could maybe start, and I will come to the questions here, to think about what do you think the most overlooked aspect of designing environments that care is? Quite a mean one, right? But you've all shared wonderful examples of things that we need to think about. What do you think is the kind of thing that's glaringly obvious that we overlook? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think well-being. There was so much focus, especially during COVID and before, on physical health, which is really important. Yes. Physical health is essential. But the impact of the built environment on emotional well-being has been overlooked. I think it's considered something fluffy. It's not. I actually was in a conference at the U.S. Green Building Council, and I used the word well-being. This was before COVID. This was probably about 10 years ago, and a woman stood up and said, "You can't use that word. It's too new age." And this is not new age. It's actually very old age. But yeah, emotional well-being is overlooked.
So interesting. Sometimes the most powerful things are described as fluffy. Sometimes I'm described as fluffy. Yes. And yeah, so thank you for that, Esther. Hunter.
I'd actually like to echo that. So I visited Maggie's centres. I'm sure you've heard of them as well. Beautiful. So the one I visited was in the UK. And for those of you who don't know, these are centres designed actually for cancer patients who are recovering and their families as well. And they usually invite the top flight architects. I'm big fans of all of them. And they design spaces for healing. So I think I would just have to repeat that. I'm sorry, it's a little bit lazy, but I really believe in it, that we don't pay enough attention to the design of healthcare spaces and health spaces. They're all very different. Yes.
Thank you so much. Karthik, how about for you?
So well-being, but particularly I think we are not focusing enough on relaxing our patients. We try to clock a lot of exercises, in rehab facilities. We try to just give them activities after activities, and then we think that I'm done, I have given that. And our care plans are all linked to the activities. But it's all about relaxing your patients. As they relax more, the endorphins are really healing. And for example, a stroke patient probably will walk maybe in 3 months if you relax them more, rather than just keep giving them activities after activities. I think that's why our environment has to be more relaxing in a way.
I wonder whether it's about, and I know, Esther, you've spent a lot of your career doing this. Do we need to start collecting the data that proves well-being isn't fluffy?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's why I started working with the U.S. General Services Administration and using wearable devices. They needed the data to prove to the decision makers that this stuff is real. And that's why we need to continue doing this kind of research and getting the data to prove that we will be healthier and both emotionally and physically in such spaces.
Yeah, the power of the emotion. Now, I'm going to jump onto the audience questions because I know we don't have so much time. And this one is very timely for any of us living in Singapore. Long, noisy and crowded commutes stress people. Particularly when the MRTs aren't running. I think the question's about to jump up. Can we design environments that care when we're commuting? What are our thoughts on that? How might we do it?
I think that's a brilliant idea. My thesis is that this shouldn't only be for hospitals. This shouldn't only be for workspaces. It happened to be easier for us to get the data from workspaces. But it should be everywhere. It should be where you live, it should be where you work, where you learn, where you play, and in between. And there are architects, there are designers who pay attention to these transitional spaces. Yeah,
thank you. It is a great question. I often say to my team, wayfinding matters, because if people get lost, and let's be frank, many hospitals, they don't prioritize wayfinding. I'm not going to say anything more on that. But you're vulnerable, you're stressed, and if you get lost, it doesn't help. Are there any other simple little things that you've observed that you think, this can make a big difference to the way I feel, whether it's commuting or finding my way around somewhere? And Karthik, I know you've deliberately thought about some of these things in the work you do in your centres.
So in our facilities, we try to control our noise level. So in our preschool, we try to control our noise level because we have lots of kids with autism who goes, their emotional regulation is completely off if the noise level is not controlled. So we control it with acoustics, and we put many pieces together. Another environment which really freaks out our people, our patients, is a cluttered environment. And in early intervention centers, in preschools, there is this notion that you have to have a lot of artwork displayed and everything has to be chaotic, because I think they think that this is very nice to showcase everything. But what happens is when you have heterogeneous group of people in an environment, it throws off people. And they don't show anything, they don't say anything, but it comes in that subtle response. Their response to intervention is bad. And that's why the clutters needs to be controlled. I think the commute, we have AirPods, which controls our, which blocks your noise level. I think that's great, but also I have auditory discrimination problem. I really have difficulty dealing with white noise behind. When we have 100 people in the room, I have difficulty conversing with one person. But I've learned to adapt. I have developed my own coping strategies. So while we control the environment, we also have to let our people develop certain coping strategies, because that's very important for the brain. Otherwise, we will lose that part of the brain. That's important.
So just to piggyback onto that, we are all neurodiverse. Everybody has, it's not necessarily a disability. We just have different ways of operating. And what we need to do, what designers need to do, is not only create universal design for people with physical disabilities, but universal design for neurodiverse people, which is not a disability. It is, we're all neurodiverse. As you said, you have auditory, I'm more visual, and so on. Yeah.
It's inspired a weird question for me. Universal design, and we've got a wonderful example here in Singapore, and Esther, if you get the chance, Enabling Village, an incredible space. Universal design allows us to accommodate more people. In medicine, we see precision medicine increasing, and Karthik, the example you shared there, you've learned to self-regulate, you've learned how to navigate space. Is there this opportunity for us really to start with universal design, but to create a precision caring environment for the individual?
So can I
yes,
answer that?
come
I thought you were asking Karthik. Yes, so that's one of the points I make in the book, that office buildings, so if we go back to workspace, had been previously designed one size fits all, and one size fits no one. So the future of workspaces for well-being, and any space for well-being, is individualized spaces, individualized sound control, but not necessarily putting on the headphones, because I was actually on a Zoom call that was really very moving, where there were two physicians in the Ukraine who asked me what to do. They can't sleep because the sirens go off in the middle of the night. The bombs are always falling in the middle of the night. And so one of the moderators said, well, you just put on the headphones. No, you need to hear the sirens. That's the whole point. But you can create environments with sort of sound cones, kind of like, what is it, Get Smart with the, this is probably dating me.
I've already done that for myself, it's okay.
The movie Get Smart with cones of silence. Well, you can have cones, museums do this, right? It is right over your desk and you choose what you want. In our studies with the GSA, we found personality makes a difference. Some people like noise and clutter and stuff going on, some people prefer other. There are technologies, and the health professionals must work with design professionals to create these individualized solutions for your immediate environment.
Thank you.
Yes, in fact, that's a new design consideration. I think in Scandinavia, they started creating in a ward, especially for open wards where there are maybe 6 or 7 patients, or maybe even more in Singapore, to create micro-environments with auditory, visual micro-environments, and also temperature-wise, so that the patients feel that they're not part of this mass, very, very clinical facility, but rather they've got their own space, and that's been very important for that.
And for my colleagues at the GSA who Kevin Kampshire was the director of research for the GSA when I started this work in 2000, and he then became the chief White House sustainability officer for the General Services Administration. So he is in a position of power to implement these findings, and his solution to both well-being spaces, physical and emotional, and sustainable design is these individualized spaces, because we found that when its relative humidity is less than 30% or greater than 60%, your stress response is 25% higher.
Humidity, you say?
Well, both, if it's too dry or too wet. So, but it costs a lot to dehumidify a whole building or humidify a whole building. So if you have your local humidifier, which you can go buy at the grocery store, at the pharmacy, that can take care of your local space. So that's a solution both for health and well-being and sustainable design.
Wonderful. It's an extreme frustration to me that we're almost out of time. We've only just got started. I wonder if you could each, by the way, Karthik, one question for you. Do you organise guided tours of your facilities? I'm sure.
Not formally, but if there is somebody who is interested, we definitely are willing to show our facilities.
They love to show.
I've been and it's great, so please
amazing.
highly recommend it.
Very inspiring. Yeah. Perhaps we can wrap up with one plea to the audience, one thing they can do. What one little thing might be able to do, say, I want to create a more caring environment for myself or my family or my colleagues, any one thing. Or I think we'd spoken previously about one thing physicians could do, and I loved the example you shared, if you can remember, Esther.
Well,
yeah,
you can start
maybe.
So I can think about it.
Well, design is healing for us, for our patients, and we shouldn't see that as a waste of money. It's not for aesthetics. It is not. It's not just to showcase. It needs to be done intentionally, and it needs to be done with our patients in mind. And we do that with holistic care in mind. We always take care of our patients from a biopsychosocial spiritual angle. So when we do that, everything is intentional, and nothing is put there in one corner just to look nice. It is done intentionally. I think that's very important for our professionals in the sector to understand.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Next time you visit your doctor or your nurses or a physiotherapist in your world, please ask for an opportunity to collaborate for sustainability, and better yet, challenge them to see whether they're making the sustainable choice for you and what choices that you can make that are a little bit more sustainable in healthcare.
Thank you, great.
So I would say to apply these principles of integrative medicine, to merge the principles of medicine, integrative medicine, the 7 domains of integrative medicine and health with design, and to apply it, to really think about applying this in every single setting where we live, where we work, where we play, where we learn, not just in hospitals, but certainly in hospitals as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to stand up to give you a standing ovation. Thank you to my panel. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Antin. Thank you. Karthik, thank you. Great as always. I would like to invite you to return to your seats, and we shall move on to the next segment. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Tamsin, and our care speakers for that wonderful segment. We just had an insightful day of presentations and discussions, and we will now have a closing panel discussion with our segment curators. I would now like to introduce the moderator for today's concluding panel discussion, Ziqq Rafit. Ziqq is a design strategist, scholar, and educator focusing on social change and responsible design. He's the appointed Global Pillar Lead for Gen AI Ethics and Governance within EY Wavespace, where he helps businesses solve problems through the lens of design and innovation. May I now invite Ziqq and our segment curators up on stage.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right? We're good. Can I invite actually Debra, Tamsin and Aric to join me up here on stage? Yeah, have a seat. All right. So I mean, it has been quite a long day, but very insightful segment speakers, all of the speakers did a wonderful job. Maybe can we get a round of applause for our segment curators, yeah? They've worked really hard to arrange, to make sure that, we have all of the right speakers with insightful sharing, and I think you all hopefully have learned a thing or two, just like I have, yeah? So, welcome, Debra, Aric, and Tamsin. So happy to have you now in the hot seat. You all have been sitting here, so now it's my turn to ask you guys all of the questions. So we spent a whole day looking into the future of tech, right? We started off with looking at the emergence of AI, then we go into sustainability, thinking about going beyond human, right? And care. We talk about bringing care into our clothes, home, and we kind of talk about the possibilities and kind of how to get there, right? For this segment, I really want to kind of bring it back to the now, yeah? As we know, design increasingly influences how we live, how we work and interact. The ethical implications of design decisions are becoming more significant. Especially in Singapore, with emphasis on innovation and smart nation initiatives, it is crucial to consider the role of design, leadership especially, in shaping ethical frameworks and guiding the next generations of designers. So kind of a little bit of the blueprint and how-tos, right? I know we've covered quite a bit in the panel sort of like segment discussion. But really kind of like tie it all together across all of these three segments is really where I'm getting at, right? Across the tech, sustainability, and care, and what are the challenges we face as a collective. So, Debra, Aric, and Tamsin, now let's imagine, right, that you are sitting in a room full of design leaders. Could you share your perspective on the current problems or challenges you observe amongst design leaders in Singapore that's kind of maybe holding them back to achieve some of the futures that we've unpacked today? Maybe Debra, would you like to start?
Yep.
Debra, sorry.
Tamsin, Debra.
Debra,
you go,
sorry,
you go.
You looked at Tamsin, so I thought, oh, Tamsin.
She's in great.
I know, it was her dress.
I know.
Honestly, that is such a big. It is such a big question, right? Because let's pull back. Because I don't know about you all, but I am still digesting. The sustainability care raised so many considerations for designers across disciplines. And it's very hard to say, oh, we should do more of this in Singapore, or we should do more than that. But I just want to pull back and say one of the there's two big takeaways for me. The first one is the big elephant in the room, which is STEM and humanities are equal. And we've gone for decades, I think, saying STEM is up here and maybe the humanities and design is a little bit here. It's more executional, it's not so strategic. But from what all the speakers have said, is design is such a fundamental factor in everything we do. And certainly from the tech perspective, that voice has to be heard right up here at the concept level, not when there's a brief, not post-strategy, it's up here. And so for me, that was, okay, then how do we make that happen, right? So that's kind of where I want to start versus we're not doing enough of this or we're not doing enough of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. For me, it's about moving design up the food chain where it has the biggest impact. And I love living in Singapore. I've lived in Singapore for 12 years. So, I consider myself fairly local. But we're very practical and tangible, yeah? So sometimes design community responds by creating tangibility. I have this sometimes at the thing I run at Design Singapore Council called the School of X. We often create strategic roadmaps. We help people solve complex challenges, and sometimes there's not a product at the end. And so people say, oh, you just generate Post-it notes. We're helping people unpack huge, complex, entrenched challenges, unravel them, map them forward and say, this is the outcome I want to create, and here's the way I can navigate forward. And then people say, but what am I paying for? And you're like, okay, here's a little PowerPoint deck, or here's a little report, because that process isn't so well understood. So there's an element of design's journey and the role we play. And I sometimes think, I previously worked on a huge project in the UK. It was at the time the largest civil engineering project in the UK. It had spent 10 years in protest. So given planning permission, 10 years they couldn't progress because there was so much protest and anger about a new construction being built. And in the end, I was brought in to help fix the problem. And this is a depressing thing. Now, this was about 15 years ago. I couldn't call it design, what I was doing, because design and civil engineering, what, you mean you're going to build the tunnel? No. Okay, I can't call it design. Let's call it communications. Okay, I can get my head around communications. And they used to say, you're the girl that brings the fluffy bunnies and the balloons, right? And I was like, sure. And then after a while, I had all these engineers. It was a huge site, yeah. We had about 5,000 contractors, staff on the site. After a while, they would come and say, Tamsin, can you fix this? Tamsin, can you help us fix that? And we became critical. So I was in the leadership team, but we were also critical at solving all the difficult problems. The technical ones are easy. I can design a tunnel that goes under a river, but darn it, there is a historic building there, and if we go ahead, that is going to fall over, and the public will be upset because they remember their dad going to work there when he used to work in the shipping industry and go for a pint at 4 o'clock every day. That's community. You can't apply logic to that and just demolish it to make way for progress. We need to take people on a journey. So we used a design-led approach in stealth mode, made it so powerful and critical that people said, we don't know what you call it, but we want it. And we were at the top of the food chain, not at the end, saying, tell us what you want and we'll deliver it for you. So I think that is the exciting space for design. We have the opportunity to demonstrate we are not just the people that make it look good. We're not just the ones that make it work. We can solve the complex issues and then do the end point. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's interesting because I've also worked and lived in the UK for about almost a decade. And I think during my time working in the UK, I mean, with clients especially, I felt like there's the dynamics between the client and the and designers are a little bit different from my experience here in Singapore. I feel like there's a little bit more of like, hey, you guys are the expert in the UK. Help us, right? You are the designers, you are the ones with the innovation and creativity and stuff like that. When I came back to Singapore, I think the challenge when I'm in the boardroom is a little bit more of the convincing bit, right? I gotta convince people, as Muchaneta also mentioned about convincing, right? It's a little bit of that, and I feel that for designers in Singapore, there is this need for also being able to understand how to speak to leadership, and that goes then thinking about, do we have a seat at the table, right? And I think in some moments that we talk a lot about designers having a seat at the table. Aric, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think to answer the first part of your question, you know, I think the biggest challenge amongst design leaders, however you define that, is that we spend too much time talking to each other and to ourselves. But even within the design field, we're a bit fragmented. I mean, what was great about today is that, you know, I don't spend a lot of time usually at these events learning, hearing about healthcare, and I thought it was really fantastic that you could bring, you know, these very disparate parts of the design sectors together. But in terms of having a seat at the table, at least in terms of speaking with, let's say, policymakers and government, this is something, you know, I've been involved in one way or another in lots of different conferences and forums over the years, in which one of the main selling points of the organizers is, yeah, the government officials will be there, the policymakers will be there, you'll get your shot, you know, at talking to the decision makers, and then the day of the conference or forum comes, and first thing in the morning, the official entourage arrives, the main policy, usually guy, makes his speech. And then they're all gone, right? And then everyone's looking at each other going, oh, okay, it's just us again, you know? But today I have to say, for me at least, it was amazing to have Yuning on the stage with us. It's not often that you get a policymaker, you know, willing to take that kind. At least I don't know about Singapore. Maybe this is normal here, or maybe Yuning is just a special case. But it's not often that you get a policymaker to sit on a stage with a bunch of designers talking about crazy ideas, like, you know, having a non-human representation. In decision making. So at least in my very limited experience, the solution to getting a seat at the table is to just invite the policymaker, and at least that gives you a good start.
Debra, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, I think what really underscored to me the value of having different kinds of information at the table was the nature's ecosystem developed into an AI capability that you could then ask to have a seat at the table. So playing that out, if you have these specific bodies of knowledge, ecosystems, who do have their own agent, and the agent is educated, deep learning, small language network, and those are the representatives at the table with us humans, okay, then you're going to get a really powerful combination of intellect and experience to maybe bring forth solutions and ideas that we previously would not have touched. And because of the depth of knowledge and maybe the data that would come, perhaps this is another reason for policymakers and government to be there, because it's not like, oh, we're all getting together to have a drink and kind of get to know each other. It's, okay, here's the history, here's the data, here are the trends, here's what could happen if. So maybe that's the kind of strategic conversation that happens going forward, you know, using this kind of technology.
I would say, if I can, I have the great privilege of having trained thousands of public officers in Singapore. Thank you, Public Service, for giving me that pleasure. There is an understanding of what design can do, but it's not yet complete, but there's a desire to understand. But whether you're in Singapore, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in Australia, I've worked in various countries, it always has to start with, you know what it is, Tamsin, I've got a job to do. I have KPIs to deliver and I've got a problem to solve. And if I can come in and say, I can fix your problem and achieve your KPIs and then plus, suddenly they're listening. I can't just go and say, oh, please listen to me. I'm a designer. Right. Because they'll take me to a certain extent, but yeah, and I've got my own job to do. When they can say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and I say, I think we can work on this together, and then take that trusted journey and then bring in the tools and the levers we got, then they'll want to listen and learn how to do it. So we have to understand where they're coming from, not just force ourselves on them.
Correct, exactly. And I think we spoke a little bit outside of this, but really about language, right? Like essentially now design, I mean, for me especially, when I came back and I realized that design obviously sits in business, I needed to learn how to speak business, because I feel that's where also I need to make impact, right?
Well, so designers are learning how to speak tech. And tech needs to learn how to speak business, and business needs to learn to speak all of it.
Correct.
And, you know, this morning, the tech speakers were saying, experiment, use the tools, grow outside your community. And yes, that's going to help design, but I think it's going to help all of us.
Mm-hmm. Let's zoom out even further. So Singapore is obviously known for its pragmatic approach to policy and planning. How can this pragmatism be balanced with the need for a more value-driven approach to design? So let's say beyond Singapore, what role should public institutions, private sector, and like civil society play in setting, say, the ethical standards for design?
I feel like the ladies, Debra and I need no encouragement to dominate here, Aric, but I think you need to get a word in edgeways before.
Yeah, no, actually, this is, I think, a very good question, especially when it comes to cultural institutions. And it's something that I'm really, and we at Instituut are very much focused on. First of all, I think we need to really be clear that, going back to what Debra and earlier speakers were saying, you know, STEM isn't enough, right? All the sort of complex challenges that we face, you know, yes, there might be economic solutions, there might be technical or technological solutions, there might be political solutions. It requires all of them, but by themselves, that's not enough either, because these things never progress the way, you know, when you look at why things do not progress the way they perhaps ought to, it's because they're missing a really valuable component, which is culture, right? Because when you're talking about making change, again, it's not just the financing, the politics, et cetera. It's also changing ways of thinking, ways of understanding, ways of looking at things, being able to actually see and then go towards new imaginaries, right? And that's where culture comes in. So in that sense, I believe, of course, that cultural institutions have a really important role to play. The problem is, I think most of us aren't really taking full advantage of the potential that we have. In dealing with all these sort of big challenges and questions, as like museums or cultural institutions, we tend to sort of stick to being places of discussion, debate, and presentation, right? We can do a lot of talks, a lot of discussions, a lot of presentations, a lot of exhibitions. Great idea, we'll put it on a wall or a pedestal. With design museums in particular, one could argue that we could really actually look back to how we started. And canonically speaking, the first design museum, as the story goes, was the V&A, right? In mid-19th century London, and then many of the others, Cooper Hewitt, Mack, etc., were all kind of modeled on that. And these museums started out as being places where the museums worked with industry to improve the quality of manufacture and the level of consumer taste. Now, these are generally part of, kind of these often imperialistic economic development or economic agendas, but they're working with industry. And I think in some ways, if we go back to that, we can ask, who should we be working with now to tackle the questions that we need to tackle today? We know how to make beautiful products and sell them, but when we're dealing with all this sort of nonstop litany of crises and so on, who outside of our field can we be working with, and what are the questions that we should be working with them on, so that we can go beyond just talking and exhibiting, but actually enacting. And I can probably go on and on about this. And yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I think one of the things you talked about was the pragmatic approach to problem solving. Design is wonderful for solving problems. But in the process, you need divergence. That's where the imagination comes in. As in Debra's segment, we were talking about, it's a wonderful thing that designers can dream. We can see other things. When I worked with Claudia on this dress, she and I were ridiculously excited. Oh, and then we had to try and bring the engineers in to make it function. We could see something that sometimes others can't see. There's value in that. And sometimes when I work with very pragmatic organizations, they dismiss it. I actually have a deliberate slide in some of my workshops, in fact, nearly all of my workshops, that says, you are not winning if you're the first to find the solution. Because they will come and say, right, I already know what the solution is. How are you going to use design to make it for me? It's like, actually, are you sure? I had a friend who posted something recently on LinkedIn about how many different combinations there can be out of just 6 Lego blocks. There are so many. And I said, it's the same with a complex challenge. There is not one way of solving it. And the way we get to those wonderful solutions is by exploring different opportunities, by stepping far enough back that we can see the problem with a different lens. And that's where I see we need to work more. The pragmatism in Singapore and in many countries is wonderful. Singapore is a nation built by design. It's incredible. You look at the plants everywhere. That was intentional. You look at the water we have. Thank you, New Water. Intentional. You look at our housing estates, our healthcare system, all by design. There was vision and then pragmatic application of how to get there. But the vision was important. And sometimes I think we lose track of the value of divergence before we narrow in. And I think that's the bit we need to kind of really allow to be celebrated, understood, and brought into the process more.
Could not agree more. I think there are 2 parallel tracks. One is, parents and educators and businesses, encourage your children to color outside the lines. I mean, go wild with these tools. The lines are there as a guide. Go wild. And for business leaders, it's where can you take this idea, but also where should this idea not go? And then plan to mitigate anything that looks nefarious. So that's one track. The other track is to say, what are the values that we want to have in our relationship with AI? What should the relationship look like? What are the parameters? What are the ethics? What does responsibility mean when we are partnered with machines? That's our lighthouse. And that's what's going to help us stay in control. Meantime, we should be exploring and doing amazing things. I just want to share this quote. Technology works best when individuals are left alone to be different, creative, and disobedient. And this is from the late Donald Valentine, who was the founder of Sequoia.
Amazing. I love that. I love that quote. Unfortunately, we're also running out of time. So I kind of want to also maybe get you all to help summarize, so as how you did with the other speakers, but slightly different, not really actions. I kind of want you guys to be able to maybe help me close this off with a word. It's going to be really tough, but a word to describe our collective future. What would that be? Ooh, tough one, yeah?
All right.
Do you want to go
arrowing.
first?
I'm firing the
One
arrow.
Oh, okay. Well, I had 2 words, so I cheated. I coloured outside the lines and I went, he said 1 word, I'm going with 2 words. My first word was exhilarating, and my second word is precarious.
Oh, well, if she's having 2, me too.
Sure.
That's why I let you go first. Disobedience reigns here. Curiosity. We have to stay curious. One of my concerns about AI is we'll stop thinking, we'll stop being curious. So stay curious and be courageous, because there is no innovation or change without courage. It is about stepping outside the line and being a little bit explorative, a little bit disobedient. So curiosity and courage. God, Aric, you can have 3.
Can I have a few
Wait,
sentences?
then I want a bonus one.
I might take a whole paragraph.
We're taking over now. Just do it. Go on. No one will tell us off.
Yeah, I'm not here. It's just okay.
Well, you know, I was going to be cheeky and just say imminent. The future is imminent, right? It's coming, but after today, I kind of want to say it's imminent, but also not that imminent. You know, there's been a lot of talk, as there always is, about how the future is coming faster than we think, and everything's progressing so quickly. But you know, since we're all dating ourselves, I've been around the block a few times also, and yes, there are a lot of exciting developments, but also a lot of developments that we need to be very cautious about. But actually, when you think about it, they're maybe not developing quite as quickly as we're saying they are. Even with AI, you're reading a lot more now about people questioning exactly how groundbreaking it actually will be, or how disruptive it actually will be. But even in areas like, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but you know, let's say self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles. I mean, the widespread adoption of autonomous vehicles has been just 5 years away for at least the past 20 or 30 years in my recollection. So, you know, yes, things are moving, things are coming, but maybe not to slag anybody off, but rather to be a bit reassuring. It's not maybe happening that quickly either, so there is time for us to perhaps reflect and deal with the potential consequences.
So what's your word?
No, hang on, Aric, I want to give you a high five. Come. Well done for breaking the rules so tremendously.
Yeah,
1 word, I give you a
Twitter
paragraph.
statement,
Well done,
yeah.
Aric. I'm proud of you.
But I think I think there is wisdom in doing things slow. I think as much as we talk about speed, we talk about all this new emerging tech, there's also care and wisdom in doing things slowly. And with that, can we get a round of applause for our lovely segment curators?
Well done.
For the Design Futures Forum 2024.
You guys lasted a whole day with us talking about the future. It's 2024, not 2025 yet, because the future is imminent, but not that imminent, according to Aric. Thank you for holding it out. Give me 1 minute just to wrap us up for today, because some of you are still joining us tomorrow to go deeper into some of these topics. It is really hard to try and sum up all the good stuff we got today. Just too much. So I'm going to try and do this and try and link all 3 in one way, okay? So I took away, the greatest thing that we can do is to stay healthy. The greenest thing that we can do is to stay healthy, because climate crisis is a healthcare crisis. Nature is good for our health, and therefore caring for nature will help us care for ourselves. Now in doing so, tech can help actually give nature a voice if used properly. And AI and tech, the onslaught of it, will help us be more creative, hopefully in engaging nature and building more sustainable, caring spaces. Do not underestimate the beauty of bird sounds or portrait versus landscape on the impact of the environment. Designers, I know they're loving this. I know all my folks from the council here are going to badger me for a spa in the office very soon, because we are up for a renovation. And I look forward to fashion designers designing a cone of silence for me to take onto the MRT. Wearables for health. I hope you found that these discussions were provocative. They were not meant to give us all the answers, but you can tell we brought in non-designers and designers to talk to all of us precisely because we got to stop talking to ourselves. And we got to color outside the box and start talking and hearing from other people so that we can find beauty in all the spaces in between. Now, all that remains for me to say today is, A, the insect snacks that we promised you are waiting for you outside. So crunchy insects are outside waiting for you. 2, to pair your crunchy insects, we have our very own festival beer. Thank you, Brewworks. I've said this like 3 times. I'm becoming the beer lady already at this rate. I'm gonna like pop out a can of beer after this. We've got our very own festival beer done by Brewworks. Thank you very much, Brewworks. And alongside with that, if insects are not your thing, we've got safe food. We've got crackers that were made from the spent, the spent grains. Thank you, from making the beer from Brewworks. So sustainability, security, we're all coming down to it. And if you want something a little bit harder because it's been a hard day, we've got whiskey cocktails and whiskey drinks from Royal Salute. So thank you to all our partners. I really am becoming the beer lady and the drinks lady at the end of this. So thank you all for joining us. Design Singapore Council, we're so happy to have all of you. See some of you tomorrow, and we will start over at the Arts House if you're coming over for the emerging tech and the sustainability sessions, and then Karen will be here in the afternoon. So enjoy your insects, spent grains, and drinks. See y'all. Thank you.